Stop throwing away your banana peels and stop treating bananas as if they are just a quick snack that has no deeper meaning for your health. Because when you slow down and look at this fruit in a more complete way, you begin to realize that it is connected to several important systems inside the human body that most people never really think about in everyday life. And before we go deeper, I want you to understand something simple. This is not about turning bananas into some kind of miracle food. It is not about exaggeration, and it is not about promising results that sound too good to be true. The goal here is much more practical. It is about understanding how a simple daily food can quietly support the body over time when it is part of a consistent routine. Most people underestimate foods like bananas because they are familiar. They are cheap, easy to find, soft and simple to eat, and in many cases people associate simple with not important. But the human body does not work based on complexity or price. It works based on nutrients, consistency, and long-term patterns. As the body gets older, a number of natural changes begin to happen gradually. These are not sudden changes, and they are not necessarily problems by themselves. They are part of the normal aging process. Digestion becomes a little slower. Nutrient absorption is not as efficient as it once was, and the balance of bacteria inside the gut begins to shift over time. Now here's the important part. These changes do not always create immediate symptoms that people notice right away. Instead, they build slowly. Things like energy levels, digestion comfort, and general daily stability are often influenced by these small internal shifts that accumulate over years. This is exactly why small daily habits matter more than complicated nutrition plans that are difficult to follow consistently. A medium banana contains 2 types of fiber that work in different but complementary ways: soluble fiber and insoluble fiber. And even though these sound technical, the idea behind them is actually very simple. Insoluble fiber adds structure and bulk inside the digestive system. It helps the natural movement of food through the intestines stay more regular. It is not something that creates a dramatic effect, but it supports a steady rhythm inside digestion. Soluble fiber behaves differently. It absorbs water and turns into a gel-like substance inside the digestive tract. This slows down digestion slightly and helps nutrients enter the bloodstream in a more gradual way instead of all at once. And when these 2 types of fiber are combined in a single food, like a banana, the result is a more balanced digestive response over time. Not extreme, not immediate, but steady and consistent. Now we go one step deeper. Bananas also contain something called resistant starch, especially when they are slightly underripe. This is important because most people never think about ripeness beyond taste. But biologically, ripeness changes how the body processes the food. Resistant starch is a type of carbohydrate that is not fully broken down in the small intestine. Instead, it travels further down into the colon, where it interacts with the gut microbiome. And this is where things become interesting. Because the gut microbiome is not just a passive system, it is a living environment made up of trillions of bacteria that actively influence digestion, nutrient processing, and internal balance. Resistant starch becomes a type of fuel for beneficial bacteria. And when those bacteria are supported regularly, they help maintain a more stable internal digestive environment over time. Now, before we move on, I want you to notice something important. We are not talking about instant effects. We are talking about gradual changes that depend on consistency, and that idea will come back again and again in this video. Now let's move forward and talk about something that is often mentioned but rarely explained in a clear and realistic way: the role of minerals inside the body, especially potassium and magnesium, and how they support everyday physical function. A banana contains potassium, and potassium is one of the key minerals involved in how the body regulates electrical activity. That might sound very technical, but the idea behind it is actually quite simple. Every movement in your body depends on electrical signals. Your heartbeat, your muscle contractions, and even basic nerve communication rely on a constant exchange of signals between cells. Potassium is one of the main elements that makes this communication possible, together with sodium. The important thing here is not to think of potassium as something dramatic or instantly noticeable. It does not create a sudden effect that you can feel immediately after eating a banana. Instead, it supports a background system that is always working, every single second of the day. As people get older, this balance becomes more sensitive, not because the body stops working, but because small imbalances are less easily compensated for than in younger years. That is why consistency in nutrition starts to matter more over time than occasional healthy choices. A banana provides a simple and natural way to support this system without complexity. It is not about high doses or aggressive changes. It is about steady contribution over time. Now let's add another layer to this. Bananas also contain magnesium. Magnesium is involved in hundreds of processes inside the body. It plays a role in energy production, muscle relaxation, and general cellular function. One way to understand magnesium is to think of it as a supporting element that allows other systems to function smoothly. It does not usually create a strong immediate sensation, but it contributes to overall stability in how the body performs daily tasks. When magnesium intake is low over long periods, some people may notice gradual changes, such as reduced energy consistency, slower physical recovery, or general tiredness. These are not sudden effects, but slow patterns that build over time. This is why nutrition is often less about extremes and more about long-term support. Now, another important point is how foods work together rather than individually. A banana on its own is one thing, but when it is combined with other foods, the overall effect on digestion and energy release changes. For example, when a banana is eaten with protein or healthy fats like nuts or yogurt, the digestion process becomes slower and more stable. This leads to a more gradual release of energy instead of a quick rise and drop. This is not a strict rule. It is simply how the body naturally responds to combinations of nutrients. And this brings us to a very important idea that many people overlook. The body does not experience food as separate items. It experiences meals as complete systems. Every component in a meal influences how the others are processed. Now let's shift into another important area, the brain. The brain is one of the most energy-demanding organs in the body. Even though it is small compared to the rest of the body, it consumes a large portion of daily energy because it is constantly active. It manages memory, attention, emotional responses, decision-making, and countless background processes at the same time. Because of this, it depends heavily on a steady supply of nutrients that support its function over time. Bananas contain vitamin B6, which plays a role in the production of neurotransmitters. These are chemical messengers that allow brain cells to communicate with each other. When this system is functioning properly, people tend to experience more stable focus and mental clarity throughout the day. Not a dramatic change, but a smoother and more consistent mental rhythm. Bananas are also indirectly connected to serotonin pathways, which are involved in mood regulation and sleep cycles. This is one of the reasons why simple dietary choices can sometimes influence how calm or settled a person feels, especially in the evening. And this becomes more relevant as sleep patterns naturally change with age, making consistency in daily habits even more important. Now we are going to move into something even more important: internal balance and long-term stability. Now let's talk about a concept that connects almost everything we've discussed so far: internal balance inside the body, and how small daily habits can influence that balance over long periods of time. One of the most important systems involved in this balance is the digestive system, and more specifically, the gut environment. This is where food is not just broken down for energy, but also where a large part of the body's internal regulation takes place. Inside the gut, there is a complex community of microorganisms known as the microbiome. These microorganisms are not random or inactive. They play a role in how food is processed, how nutrients are extracted, and how the internal environment of the body is maintained. Now here is where bananas become relevant again. Because bananas contain fiber and resistant starch, they provide a type of fuel that supports beneficial bacteria inside the gut. This does not create an immediate visible effect, but over time, it contributes to a more stable digestive environment when consumed consistently. It is important to understand that this is not about a single food doing something powerful on its own. It is about the long-term relationship between diet and the internal ecosystem of the body. When that ecosystem is supported consistently, the body tends to function in a more stable and predictable way. Now let's add another important layer: inflammation. Inflammation is a natural process in the body. It is part of how the body responds to stress, physical strain, or internal imbalance. Without it, the body would not be able to repair or protect itself properly. However, the key factor is balance. When inflammatory activity remains slightly elevated over long periods of time, it can influence how the body feels and functions in subtle but noticeable ways over time. This is where diet becomes one of many supporting factors. Bananas contribute indirectly to this balance through their fiber content and the way they interact with the gut microbiome. When beneficial bacteria are supported, they produce compounds that are associated with maintaining internal stability in the digestive system. This is a gradual process. It does not happen quickly, and it does not depend on a single meal. It depends on repetition and consistency over time. Bananas also contain natural plant compounds with antioxidant properties. Antioxidants are involved in helping the body manage oxidative stress, which is a normal byproduct of metabolism. Every day, the body produces reactive molecules as part of energy production. This is completely normal, but maintaining balance in these processes is part of long-term internal stability. It is important to be realistic here. Bananas are not a treatment for any condition, and they do not directly control inflammation or complex biological processes. They are simply one part of a broader dietary pattern. Now let's move into an area that many people misunderstand: blood sugar and energy. Bananas contain natural carbohydrates, which are a normal and necessary source of energy for the body. When consumed, these carbohydrates are broken down into glucose and used by cells for energy production. However, the way this process affects the body depends on several factors, including ripeness and what other foods are eaten alongside the banana. Fiber and resistant starch help slow down digestion. When digestion is slower, glucose enters the bloodstream more gradually. This creates a more stable energy response after eating. When bananas are combined with protein or healthy fats, this effect becomes even more balanced. The body processes the meal more slowly, leading to a steadier release of energy over time. This is why the same food can feel different depending on context. A banana on its own is processed differently than a banana combined with other foods. The key idea here is not restriction, but balance and combination. Now we are approaching the final part, where we bring everything together and simplify the main takeaway. When we bring all of this together, the main idea becomes much simpler than it might seem at first. Bananas are not special because they create dramatic changes in the body. They are not powerful in the way that people sometimes expect from so-called superfoods. Instead, their value comes from something much more practical and realistic: their ability to support the body consistently over time as part of an overall balanced diet. This is an important distinction because many people look for quick or noticeable effects from food, but the human body does not operate on quick changes in most areas of long-term health. It operates through patterns, repetition, and accumulation over time. And this is where simple foods often become more meaningful than complicated ones. A banana is easy to include in daily life. It does not require preparation, planning, or special conditions. It can be eaten on its own or combined with other foods depending on personal preference. This simplicity is what makes it useful in a real-world context, because consistency matters more than complexity. Now let's reflect on something important. Many people approach nutrition by trying to find the perfect food or the best solution. But in reality, the body responds more to what is repeated daily than to what is done occasionally at a high level of intensity. This means that small habits, when maintained over long periods of time, can have a more meaningful impact than short-term extreme changes. Bananas fit into this idea because they are sustainable. They are not difficult to eat, they are widely available, and they can be incorporated into many different types of meals. Now let's connect this to digestion again, because it is one of the key systems we've been discussing. The digestive system responds very strongly to routine. When food intake is consistent, the body tends to maintain a more stable rhythm internally. This affects how energy is released, how nutrients are processed, and how the overall system feels over time. Bananas, with their combination of fiber and natural carbohydrates, contribute to this rhythm in a gentle and steady way. They do not overwhelm the system. They do not create extreme changes. Instead, they support gradual processes that work in the background, and this is often what makes them useful. Now let's also return briefly to the idea of combining foods. When bananas are paired with protein sources or healthy fats, the overall digestive process becomes slower and more balanced. This creates a more stable release of energy, which can help avoid sudden fluctuations after eating. This is not a strict rule, but rather a natural observation about how the body processes mixed meals. Different combinations of food will always create slightly different outcomes, and understanding this helps people make more flexible and realistic dietary choices rather than strict or rigid ones. At this point, we can also step back and look at the bigger picture again. Health is not built from one single decision. It is built from repeated daily behavior over long periods of time. Sleep, movement, stress levels, and nutrition all interact together as part of one system. Food is only one part of that system, but it is a part that we interact with every single day. That is why small, simple foods like bananas can become meaningful when they are used consistently. Now we move into the final section, where we bring the message to a clear conclusion. So when we look at everything together, the final takeaway is actually very simple. Even though we've explored many different systems in the body, bananas are not something that should be viewed as a miracle solution. They are not a replacement for a complete diet, and they are not responsible for any dramatic changes on their own. Instead, they represent something much more realistic and sustainable. They are a simple, everyday food that contains a combination of nutrients that support basic functions inside the body when they are consumed consistently as part of a normal routine. And in many cases, it is exactly this type of simplicity that makes them useful. Because the truth is, most long-term changes in the body do not come from rare or extreme actions. They come from repeated daily habits that build up quietly over time without requiring constant attention or effort. A banana is easy to include in that kind of system. It does not require planning, it does not require preparation, and it fits into almost any lifestyle without difficulty. That makes it practical, and in nutrition, practicality is often more important than complexity. Now, it is also important to keep expectations grounded. No single food, including bananas, can define your health on its own. The body is influenced by many factors at the same time, including movement, sleep quality, stress levels, and overall dietary patterns. Food is just one part of that larger picture. But when that part is consistent and balanced, it can support the body in maintaining stability over time. And this is where the real message of everything we discussed becomes clear. It is not about intensity. It is not about perfection. It is about consistency. Small choices repeated every day shape the long-term direction of how the body feels and functions. Bananas fit into this idea because they are simple, accessible, and easy to maintain as a daily habit without pressure or complexity. And sometimes, the most effective habits are not the ones that feel dramatic or extreme, but the ones that are so simple, they become part of everyday life without effort. So instead of thinking of bananas as something special or something meaningless, it is more accurate to think of them as a small, stable part of a broader routine that supports long-term balance in a quiet and steady way. And when combined with other basic healthy habits, that consistency is what truly shapes outcomes over time. In the end, it is not about one food. It is about the pattern of living that you build day by day. And if there is one simple idea to take away from all of this, it is this: the body responds most strongly not to occasional effort, but to consistent care over time. That is where real change, stability, and long-term well-being come from.